Hello and welcome to the final Google Hangout as part of our USS Colorado experience and the Colorado History's Greatest Hits series we've been doing. So these Hangouts are supported by MSU Denver, TPS, Teaching with Primary Sources at MSU Denver, the Denver Post Educational Services, History Colorado, and the USS Colorado Commissioning Committee. All building context and leading up to an exciting teacher workshop we have coming July 28th. And ultimately the commissioning of the USS Colorado, which will be the 15th Virginia-class naval submarine. So my name is Taylor Kendall, project coordinator with the Teaching with Primary Sources program at MSU Denver. Today we're also joined by Dr. Raleigh Schendel, professor of elementary literacy education at MSU Denver, as well as Todd Laugen, also professor here in the history department at MSU Denver. So thank you both for joining us. For those viewing through Google+, we will utilize the Q&A app, so feel free to submit questions that way. We'll also use the Showcase app to share some links, and again, this will also be archived on YouTube, so it'll be available later. And we definitely highly encourage questions as they come. Go ahead and submit them, and we'll answer them as we can. So with that, I'm going to turn it right over to Raleigh to explore literacy and classroom implications. Raleigh, cheers.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here and help you connect your students or yourselves to primary sources as well as other sources of other content areas. In this particular time frame, we're going to focus on history, but these strategies and ideas can be extended to any content area: science, math, language arts, the study of different types of genres, and so forth. I want to begin by defining or explaining the purposes for this Google Hangout from my perspective. One, it's to engage learners in history-related content. Two, to make content accessible to all students. Three, to capitalize on all three of the receptive language arts to connect learners to that content. And four, to nurture student learning through the expressive language arts. So this is basically going to be a two-part discussion, hopefully, so you can stop me at any point and ask a question, and I'll do my best to answer those or leave you the resources that can give you those answers. The first part is focusing on text sets, and I'll go into that more specifically in a moment. And the second part focuses on bridging learners to the texts that they're viewing, listening to, or reading. And that's through some reading strategies and or graphic organizers. So I've developed a couple that I think might be helpful to you guys. And the intent in showing you those is to just help you realize that I looked at some of the things that are out there and just modified them to meet learners' needs with respect to history and vocabulary in history. To begin, I don't know if you've viewed the past Google Hangouts in this series. There were 4 preceding this one. But I want to zoom in on one in particular, and this has everything to do with text sets. There was a fascinating Google Hangout that focused on how Colorado got its boundaries or its shape. And during that presentation, I found the use of maps and pictures extremely useful for me as a learner. So to follow the teachings of the presenter and to understand what was being conveyed, those pictures and maps brought relevance to me. So they made it come to life, the history and the geography associated with that. At one point in the presentation, pictures were actually shown of Colorado's boundaries in relation to the other states that border it. And there's actually a landmark that specifies each one of those points, apparently, and I didn't know that. And as I was looking at those pictures of the presenter and his daughter exploring those actual landmarks, which was pretty exciting, I found myself wanting a map. I needed a Colorado map to identify, okay, here's what the picture shows, but where exactly is that? So I had a lack of understanding in the latitude, longitude, and or the states that border Colorado, and I wanted to make sense of those pictures in terms of where they were actually taken on the map. So that's just a specific example of me as a learner needing other texts to make sense of the message that was being conveyed. So with respect to that, I want to define text sets. Really basically, when I say text, I mean any picture, image, written document, artifact, poster, anything that is expressive in nature that we're trying to take in as we read our world. So texts include anything, even listening. So text sets are really a way for understanding information, concepts, and ideas that we're trying to gain about our world. And as a teacher, when I think about diverse text that can be used to connect learners to my content, then I realize that there are many, many ways for me to bridge the distance between wherever my learners are at to wherever I hope to get them to be. So specifically, thinking about text sets about thinking about learning modalities. We're auditory, we're kinesthetic, and we're auditory learners. And capitalizing on the visual and the auditory learning together, we help learners make sense of our content, or our texts, or our context. And when we give them an opportunity to actually create based on what we're teaching them, then that attends to that kinesthetic point, that hands-on, that manipulative quality that many learners need. But in surveying my students throughout my 18-year career as an educator, 75% at least are visual learners. So when we present something like this, it helps to have a bunch of visuals that go along with it. So sample text sets can be drawn from anywhere: your classroom, your school, your partnering teachers, the web, obviously, the school grounds, the community, and libraries. I accessed an amazing resource that I want to turn you guys on to, and that's the Denver Public Library System. And what I found in trudging through their resources and what they have to offer is that they are certainly there to help, teachers in particular. So they'll do anything and everything they can to help make content accessible to your students. One thing that I did is contacted them and just started perusing their website, and we'll give you some links and or make those links possible for you following this presentation with some of the documents that we include with it. But if you go to the Denver Public Library website, you can actually find quick and easy links to guides to requesting particular text sets. So what I did, I just went through the process that I'm hoping you might go through, and that is getting on that website, and I typed in, I'm looking for 5th grade learner information on the history of Colorado. What text sets might you have that attend to these two standards? So I went to the CDE website and I downloaded the 5th grade history or social studies standards, and I read through those, and standards 1 and 2 for social studies, for history there, applied specifically to what we're doing here in making Colorado history available to students. What they did is responded within, I don't know, half an hour, and told me that absolutely they could do that. What really did I want, and what do I want to do with this, and what types of texts did I want to include? I told them that I wanted texts that varied in complexity, that varied in visual stimuli, that varied in getting 5th graders excited about Colorado history. And they absolutely said, okay, we can do this, we've got this, we've got this. And they actually immediately started compiling a text set for me. So what I want to do is share with you a text set that they compiled for me. And I'll show you that right here. Hopefully that comes up. Here's the text set that they gave me. And this was focused on Colorado history. So if you see, this is the whole text set that they gave. They have many, many more resources than this, but they compiled it into a 14 or 15 text set for me. And I don't know if you can notice or not, but this is a very diverse text set that can help 5th graders make sense of Colorado history, and become engaged in reading, research, viewing, and listening to learn more about it. So they included biographies. Here are a few that I'm showing you. They included information on our gold rush and how areas of Colorado were inspired to grow as a result of people seeking fortune and so on there. Basic understanding of the overview of Colorado, what it has to offer recreationally, all those things, and the history of tourism and its focus as a recreation state. Some particular places like Mesa Verde, which are phenomenal places to visit and learn about the rich history of Colorado. Colorado's role in America's West. Some information on the Native Americans that inhabited Colorado areas, and if you'd seen the previous Google Hangout, you got a pretty rich experience that involved Native Americans here in Colorado and some of the turbulence associated with us moving into the area. If you notice, these texts are diverse in the sense that they really capture particular students' interest and engage them in wanting to learn. So in this case, an attention to the prominent female figures in Colorado history. But here's one of a couple texts that were wildly interesting for me, and this was about, it was, I guess, really geared towards the audience of children. So a text like this really makes the history of Colorado come to life. Another visually stimulating text. Some stories, some narrative information in texts that support young learners and helping them to make connections between the informational texts studied and presented in class and how those can be accessed through narrative. And another just sample of the a narrative text that's a mystery that involves a picture of Abraham Lincoln stolen from our Capitol building here.
Hey Raleigh.
Yeah.
Todd here. We have a question.
Okay.
Our viewers, Tonya has asked, how long do you get to borrow the text sets?
These text sets were, I think I could check them out for 2 weeks, and I could extend them online if necessary. There was a little bit of leeway in how long you could keep those. It's dependent kind of upon whether or not other teachers have demand for those texts as well. All right, so that was one text set, and what I want to do is just real quick show you a couple other text sets just to help you bridge the gap between learning about teaching history through text sets and teaching other topics. Here's one that they compiled for me. They thought it would be really interesting, and I agreed if we would show a couple other text sets that are going to be useful, and I'm hopeful that that comes up. There it is. So this text set, and I didn't take individual pictures of each of these texts, but this is a text set that's focused on inventions and inventing, and this was geared towards third grade readers. I don't know if you notice or not, but there's a diverse set of materials here. There are some biographies of inventors that scroll across the top there, that little arc. Some narrative stories in relation to inventions. Some other picture books that are associated with text sets. This rocket science book that really focused on the inventions of young kids or younger inventors. Story on text sets. And then these three were actually videos of inventors, inventions, and how they've changed our world. And then robots, the animated movie Robots, which I thought was a really powerful addition to this in providing that for students to view. We could stop at particular points using a directed viewing and listening strategy and have them make connections to what we've been learning about inventions. Another text set that they included for me, which I thought was particularly interesting, was this text set that focuses on music and musicians. And I've published a couple articles on capitalizing on adolescent learners and their interest and lack of interest in classroom content. And I think a lot of what we try to teach them as teachers can be accessed by twisting some of our content and making relevance to something that they're particularly interested in, and that is music. So in this case, performing research on music, musicians, can be the key to engaging young and adolescent learners. But you see there's some biographies across here. Here I paired these two together because this is Jay-Z's songs and lyrics and how he had come up with some of his music, and then Jay-Z's songs performed as lullabies for babies. So I thought that was interesting. Some other texts that are key to capitalizing on some of the topics of interest of adolescent learners. And then across here, a series of music, CDs, and audio collection that include the lyrics. One way that we can greatly enforce the student participation in reading, research, viewing, and listening to grow as learners. I don't know if
who put together the lullabies of Jay-Z? I'm just curious.
I didn't look specifically at it, but I can dig into that in just a minute. I thought that was interesting. So those are some of the sample text sets that we have. Another text set that I wanted to show for you was, I don't know if I have it here. I'll try to bring it up through our share again. And that is, here it is. So this is a text set that, well, it's actually a bunch of texts that were compiled for us as a result of our collaboration on this project. And many of the picture books, the other texts particular to Navy, ships, submarines that you can see there. And it goes on and on with chapter books. I don't know if you can see the chapter books there, then nonfiction, early submarines, all having to do with, in relation to the recommissioning of the USS Colorado. So I thought that was a powerful text set for us to take a peek at. Those text sets will be available to you through the documents that we share as a result of this project that we're working on. You're welcome to contact me if you would like to have a greater understanding of text sets, but you can also go to any of your public libraries, and I've found firsthand through my experience and through my students, the vicarious experiences of my students, that most librarians are really excited and interested when a teacher candidate, professor, parent, or someone comes in and they want to gather texts in a purposeful way for meeting the needs of young learners. So in this case, going to your public library and asking them about the text sets that they offer, typically there's a 40 text limit on what can be checked out, and I don't know why that's an arbitrary number apparently, but maybe you can't carry more than 40, I don't know. But they'll give you 40, and you can really connect striving readers, learners that are very visual, learners that are very auditory, learners that are advanced or accelerated readers. You can really connect them to content by collecting a text set that helps them, all those learners, bridge the goals and objectives that you're trying to achieve through your lessons. I don't know if we have any questions.
Raleigh, can I jump in with a question?
Yeah.
Given that we've been talking a lot about history in some of the previous workshops, and you're offering some interesting connections with text sets, beyond too. I wonder if you had a chance to compare and think about the Common Core, especially language arts, reading, writing standards, and how those line up to some extent with the history standards.
Okay.
If you're talking about using texts that aren't necessarily nonfiction, using music, using fiction, but also trying to address history standards with those, potentially.
Yeah, in my review of the history standards, I found that much of the standards right now focus on informational text, expository text. Rightfully so, our world is based on learning to gain meaning or gain the understanding of a process that we need to follow to program our phone or to pay our utility bill or to make sense of our research as a scientist or whatever. In relation to those and those standards, direct connection to these text sets is that those texts are certainly essential in gathering a text set, but when you think about the textbook that we usually have at particular age levels, especially the intermediate grade levels in elementary, middle levels, and high school levels, then you can think about a text set as a supplement to that textbook and a way to make sense of what you're learning from the textbook. But not only that, when you think about primary sources, I didn't even take you to the link where let's see, it's, let me get this right, Western History and Genealogy Department at the Denver Public Library. They have access to digital versions of maps, photographs, speeches, all those types of things, laws that were written, crazy things that have both beneficially impacted our society and negatively impacted our society. Those primary sources can be accessed online now, digitally, and what that does in relation to the standards is allows our learners to, for one, understand what a primary source is and how directly linked to the actual event is this artifact, and helping them understand, well, this is a recollection of a primary source and these primary sources of information, helping them make sense of accuracy in presenting history, in this case, and the things that went on to form our state of Colorado and the way of life that we enjoy. Again, directly related to the standards. The standards require, an objective of the standards is for students to be able to perform research, be able to compare texts, be able to derive their own understanding of what, in this case, has gone on in Colorado history, and to articulate their understanding in their own words. And a diverse set of texts will allow them to do that. And really quickly, just to bring in the purpose and the real foundational essence of the narrative texts, that's a way for us to engage readers, for them to be reading about historical fiction, let's say, and they can make sense of something that went on in Colorado, like that mystery of the Colorado State Capitol, for them to understand a little bit more about the Capitol from the vantage point of a fictional author, and to be able to discern between what's fact, what's real, what's not, what's this character have to do with the whole thing. Yeah. So hopefully, to answer your question, this integrates the standards, the CDE standards right now for young learners.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. And it just helps to I think, remember that you can address language arts standards with history content sometimes, too.
Yeah, and that's what was crazy. I'm glad you brought that point up, because I don't spend a ton of time sifting through the content area standards, although the only way that the language arts exists is through content. I mean, if we're just teaching strategies for reading, writing, speaking, listening, viewing, and visually representing in general without context or contact to particular content areas, it doesn't have relevance. So it's just another thing that we learn that's not connected.
Right.
And the beauty of those subject areas is that that's what students are interested in.
Yeah. No, great.
If we're interested in history, let's use it.
And we have a couple of a comment and a question here to note as well. Dana notes that there's a company that takes good old rock and roll tunes and turns them into lullabies using the xylophone.
Oh, whoa.
And we can have her provide us with a link to some of those
All right.
songs as well. And then there's a question from Leanne about specific text sets. Were there some you found particularly good, one that sticks out in your mind? Anything come to mind there?
Yeah, and I'm glad you she brought that up and you conveyed that to me. That's my last point on text sets before we move on. Obviously, I'll answer more questions if they arise, but the best text set that I've ever seen was compiled by learners. So really the key to this is for me to use text sets to help my learners gain access to content, but then as I use those text sets to teach them about what text did we just use to help you learn. So it's about helping them learn about themselves as learners, so I can get the ball rolling and give them momentum so they can carry on. They're not just relying upon me to teach them. Why not teach them to fish, and then they can, feed themselves for a lifetime. So the next step, the next stage is to challenge our learners to collect and compile text sets that they feel are relevant for particular topics, ideas, concepts that we teach in our content areas in our classrooms. In particular, I had an incredible text set that was developed in relation to the, and I think I shared this in one of my classes, to the events that took place in New Orleans during that catastrophe. And all the text sets that were compiled for that, with the exception of a couple, were brought to my attention by my learners. So they went out and sought these narrative texts, biographies, texts that are associated with science concepts and natural disasters, things like that. And almost together we compiled a really meaningful text set. The few things that I added to the mix was maps. What's a big, huge map that shows where New Orleans is positioned in relation to the rest of the United States and where they live, and understanding those natural disasters and how they only impact particular places on the map, but what kind of natural disasters could impact us in other places, San Andreas Fault, here in the Rockies, tornadoes, things like that, and how well prepared is our society, community for catastrophes like that, how could they impact it, how have they impacted it in Colorado history, and so on.
Thank you.
The next kind of place that I want to go briefly, and to just reiterate this point, is that the resources that are available to you guys, to me, to all teachers and learners at the Denver Public Library and any public library are immense. One thing that I want you to know about the Denver Public Library system is you can check library materials out there and you can return them to any public library. So you just have to go and, instead of putting them in the Dropbox, take them up to the circulation desk and say, I checked these out from the Denver Central Library, and they'll just return those. And I asked if it was an imposition, and she kind of giggled and said, absolutely not. We want them checked out and we want them returned. So those are two ways that they achieve those two goals. A couple things that I want viewers and listeners to know, and that's there's a really simple process for submitting a request for text sets, and you can actually go in and a librarian will help you compile a text set if you need that scaffolding or support to figure out what's possible, what's necessary, what steps do I go through, so on and so forth. Some of the resources may not leave the library, but those resources, a lot of them are available now in digital form and will continue to be. But they also offer opportunities for you to set up classroom tours, to take your classroom there, visit the library and visit those text sets there, compile text sets with them, and perform your research, so on and so forth. So those are some really powerful things to think about when you start to make plans for enhancing your teaching and student learning through text sets. One thing that I wanted to show you real quick before I move on to strategies for connecting kids to text is it's a text that was sent to me as a sample of what they're trying to do through the History Museum and Genealogy Department, Western History Genealogy Department there at the Denver Public Library. And that is this. Let's see if it comes up. Maybe. It is this. So I'm just going to show you this, and I'm going to read a little bit about what I was told. So let me pull back up at the top. The Western History and Genealogy Department of the Denver Public Library will be launching a web page to assist students with 4th grade Colorado biography projects next year. I don't know how many of us listening or viewing have a connection to those biography research projects for 4th graders, but my own son has just performed one, and I thought this was pretty fascinating because it says, these will provide students with resources for choosing a person beyond typical candidates like Molly Brown, and also give them access to primary sources on each person at an age-appropriate level. And this was one example biography that was created as a result of the materials that they offer. So this is Bernice McLeod, and here's some of the information included in that, some of the resources and sources, some of the pictures. Let's see if I can scroll down to this. There we go. That are associated with that. And I thought this was pretty fascinating from my perspective as a father and an educator, because I thought this example of what they're trying to offer the public was pretty amazing.
We have a couple quick questions and comments.
Sure.
We can jump in. First, a question about how the librarians you've worked with ever volunteered to compile the source sets to go with the text sets.
Yeah, they, well, I only spoke to the folks at the Denver Public Library in this case, and yeah, they were willing to compile the text sets and the resources and links and help students access information digitally. Was that relating to the question?
Yeah, just getting the help from the librarians in terms of those different efforts.
Yeah, and the beauty of it, I thought, was, okay, now they've done all this work for me, but I kept contacting them, asking them how, where they went, what other options they have, so I could learn about compiling text sets on my own through resources and you know, compilations that we maybe have at our school, at a private library, and home, so on and so forth.
And just a quick comment from Dana again, too, to support your suggestion that the connection between kind of fiction and nonfiction sources can be really powerful with these text sets. So she seconds your suggestion.
Yeah, when it comes to engagement and making sense of that in relation to what we've been teaching kids, it's right on.
I would say, too, I'd be remiss not to kind of bring this to the national level. The Library of Congress offers a Ask a Librarian feature that we always, you know, try to make the point that it's amazing how much you get back and how quick they are and how willing they are to help both teachers and students to get a hold of resources. So, you know, even beyond Colorado, looking at a national scope, there's similar options.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Taylor, because that's a pretty important thing to think about. There are other resources even beyond our local resources that certainly are accessible. I do want you guys to know that I requested these text sets last Friday, sitting at home in my home office, and they were compiled by Sunday morning, and they sent me an email saying, your 3 text sets are ready, and all these online links for the resources that we have otherwise were prepared. So they are pretty phenomenal. I want to...
Yeah, just a quick, Raleigh. We have about 10 minutes. Just
okay.
So I know you were going to talk a little bit about bridging learners to text.
Yeah. So bridging learners to text and helping them make sense of some of the text that we offer. So you've compiled this amazing text set, right? Now the work begins to make sure that our learners are accessing the text and they're making sense of it in terms of comprehension, vocabulary understanding, timelines, sequences, so on and so forth with regard to history. What I'd like you to think about first is the real key to helping learners in any content area, I think, is focus on academic language, academic vocabulary. And again, this is a direct connection to the Colorado State standards, and I don't think that the standards are everything we need to use to guide what we do, but they certainly give us a powerful guideline for what's necessary for learners to learn at a particular grade and how might you go about doing so. So vocabulary understanding for young learners is key, because often when we read a text we can't access it because we either don't have background knowledge on it or we don't have an understanding of the advanced vocabulary that's associated with it, particular vocabulary that's content specific. So we need to both develop the background knowledge through those narrative texts, through those historical fiction texts, through informational texts, through videos, through listening to speeches. All those things build that understanding through viewing maps. And we zoom in on particular vocabulary that we think they're going to have challenges with. So one great thing to use to help learners make sense of a text, any text, is a vocabulary analysis chart. And basically what I did is I went online. I have tons of resources that focus on vocabulary development, strategies for understanding vocabulary, and I found one that I thought would be great, and I just modified it to meet learners' needs with respect to history. So in this case, you're looking at a vocabulary analysis sheet, and here we would have the particular word or term that a student is focused on or needing to understand. I don't know, you guys could give me a pivotal term associated with history.
Prohibition.
Prohibition. So we'd put prohibition here, or teach the learner how to do that. We'd model this process first for learners who need it. Other learners are intuitive. They get it. They're like, okay, I can make sense of this. I'll take a stab at it. We provide or find a textbook definition of it. We offer a sentence using the word, which sounds probably pretty familiar to most of us. We include an example of prohibition, and then we include similar terms or synonyms that would help us to make sense of prohibition, what it means, and this can really help us to connect the understanding of prohibition with other key historical terms that we've learned about in the past in our content. So it's just phenomenal, and I think initially you might have to really guide students through this process, but essentially it's a matter of just backing off and saying, make sense of this, use this to help you as a learner. And then one of the most beautiful parts here goes back to that 75%, that's an informal research number, of my students throughout my career that are primarily visual learners, and yet we teach them auditorily all the time. So this helps them connect a picture and or a symbol or a series of symbols to a particular term like prohibition. So it's that symbol that helps them understand prohibition in ways that they understand McDonald's, recycling, stop sign, peace sign, whatever. So this is a really powerful tool to help learners make sense of key vocabulary so they can access the bigger picture of the, in this case, historical content that we're trying to teach them. Are there any questions on that? I just modified this and changed it to meet our needs for today. I would change this and or teach it to students and have them change those boxes and categories to meet their individual needs.
And I suppose the words from there could go on a word wall cumulatively, right, over the course of a unit or semester or what have you.
Absolutely, a word wall that's available to all the students, or a personal word wall that they keep in their folders to make sense of these key terms as they prepare for continued learning, the final exam, whatever.
And Leanne has a comment that she had used this for a sociology class.
Okay.
and she comments that it helped bridge the way to what she needed to look for to support her paper. So it was useful for writing too.
Absolutely. Yeah, this can fabricate the ability to actually put together a written work for a student to showcase their understanding and use that to guide how they structure their writing. Beautiful. That's an actual amazing segue, because the next document or item that I want to show or share that's meant to help you guys bridge learners' understanding is a historical event map. So this historical event map is meant particularly to do just that. Make sense of an event and use that understanding of the event to actually present on it, perform research, and or write it up. So if you can see this is a historical event map that I basically just went to Google symbols and the symbols on my computer, and I just created this spiral that allowed an understanding, or might allow an understanding for a student of a particular event, the people involved, the issue, the problem, the goals associated with it, what they were trying to achieve, because they're not all problems, they're seeking solutions, the dates and locations, key events, the outcome of the event, and the long-term or short-term effects or impacts on particular people. So something like this can be incredibly powerful for a learner like myself as I plan writing and or to prepare a debate or to be a part of a discussion and to showcase my understanding on a particular event.
And just real quick too, Dana noted that this would be a great tool for preparing students to search the Library of Congress.
Oh, yes. Gifted. Absolutely. So using these to make sense of the resources we're providing for our students in the sense of finding sources, text sets, other things like that would be a beautiful way to use it. Again, I would encourage you to modify it and or challenge your students to modify it to meet their particular needs. And this certainly doesn't need to say historical event map. It could be process for photosynthesis. And you change each one of these and you make sense of each of the steps of the process, cancel some out, so on and so forth.
And one other question that came in on the not through the Q&A, but just on the chat on the Google Plus side. Tanya asked, "Is the vocabulary analysis sheet?" Oh, here it is. Keith brought it up. Thank you. Is the vocab analysis sheet something students would use to create their own sort of personal dictionaries?
That sounds like a viable option to me. Yeah. I think the key to this is that we just come up with ideas. We explore new ways of teaching, new ways of learning, new ways of connecting the two, and challenging our students and nurturing their ability to use these in meaningful ways for themselves. Absolutely. There are no rules.
So we're kind of on our home stretch here. Raleigh, I don't know if you had any other favorite strategies or if you just wanted to end with a review of those, but those are some cool suggestions. Thank you.
I would say that if any of the viewers are interested in learning more about this, they can certainly contact me at MSU of Denver and find my email through the website and send me an email or request. Call me after that and we'll discuss it. I'll visit your classroom, help you practice the use of some of these strategies. These are just two that I kind of modified to meet the needs of this presentation, this learning experience. There are hundreds more and variations, thousands of variations from those. So there are many. Most are my favorite because I found they're useful to at least one student, so therefore they become powerful. I just want to wrap up by reminding myself, for one, and for modeling, I think the appropriate way to teach learners of any age, and that's to go back to the objectives and to kind of just remind ourselves what I was trying to achieve as a result of this Hangout, and to try to make sense of whether or not I achieved that. And you guys will actually have to do that on your own, in your own minds, but it's a way to carry over this learning. And the objectives of this Hangout were to engage learners in history-related content. And I'm hopeful that you learned at least one way of engaging learners at any age level to dig into content and to get excited about it like we are, because if we're teaching our content, it's probably because we're passionate about it. So these text sets, these graphic organizers, are a couple ways to help engage learners. They also make this content accessible to learners. So the more accessible we make content, the more engaged learners become, and it becomes this perpetual cycle. Capitalizing on the receptive and expressive forms of language arts are huge. So we allow students to view, to listen, to read, and to then talk about, to visually represent their learning through symbols, through art, through pictures, through mimicry, through, I don't know, acting, and to discuss what they're learning. So I can't overestimate the value of allowing our learners to discuss. In the typical 45-minute teaching experience like this, I would have had my learners probably discuss for half of the time. So turn, talk, and listen to your neighbor and tell them one idea you have for a symbol that would epitomize this concept that we've learned, or what question do you have? Ask that, pose that to your neighbor and see if they have an answer. Turn to your table group and discuss some ideas you have for compiling text sets, so on and so forth.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Perfect. That's there's no better way to end, I think, with that sort of culminating comment there. So definitely want to say thank you to those that are on the audience end. It looks like we had about 20 or 22 listening live, so that's great. And thank you to Raleigh and Todd. Raleigh definitely today, and Todd for your help on a number of these Hangouts.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Yes, and again, all of this hopefully built some context, and we are excited about the sort of culminating workshop and reception coming July 28th and 29th. That'll be at the History Colorado Center. Megan wants to let you know that you're the man, Dr. R. That was the final comment coming in. Said thank you for opening students' eyes to all the possibilities. So again, yeah, thank you. And again, this is our final Hangout. So we'll make a lot of the material available through the Hangout and the archive, but also for those interested, Todd, Raleigh, a number of the scholars and historians and experts will be available at that workshop. So if you want to pick their brains a little further, that's a good opportunity to do that. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thanks.